At best, the alien abduction phenomenon is a terrifying, traumatic experience. At its worst, well, we think they sometimes take people and don't put them back.
I lost my mother and brother to this trauma. He murdered her, then killed himself.
These women are being used as human incubators, with all their children stolen away into the night.
A 6-foot-tall entity of blue-white light paralyzed me, then bent down and said into my ear, "Hi, Steve." It knew my name.
We hear gruesome stories of experiments and dissections. Imagine dying on a metal table while paralyzed, surrounded by alien faces. It's a real horror story.
Good evening, folks.
Hi, everyone.
Yes.
Welcome back to another episode of Abductions 101, UFOs, and the Paranormal Connection.
Yes, and we always start our shows with, we like to ask each other questions about things that we may not necessarily remember. And I'd like for a change, Leslie, to ask you about that incident you had with Marshall.
Oh, yes, that was quite something.
That was in 2005. I think it was again, January 2005.
Yes, Stephen and I were practicing Kundalini raising techniques. We were meditating and we were chanting, opening our chakras, and I began to regularly astral project. Mostly I was having fun with it. I was scuba diving. I flew to Egypt, I I had more fun with astral projection than you did, I believe. But one time during this time period while we were studying it, my friend Marshall died. He was a member of this art club that Stephen and I attended monthly, and he was just a complete sweetheart. And he made these little
portals. They're called portals.
He called them portals. They were tiny little objects to art that he would give out to people. Everyone had portals of Marshalls.
Sometimes they'd be really nice rock items. Other times they would be things that he
painted,
made. Exactly. It was always wrapped in paper, and you never knew what you were going to get. And he was just like this lovely fellow.
Yeah, he really was. And then I heard he died, and the very next time that I found myself in the astral realm was just a few days later. I managed to separate from my body again. And this time I said out loud to the universe, I said, I want to go see Marshall. Mm-hmm. And whenever I would travel in the astral realm, if I was going a short distance, I would command myself to go somewhere, and I would go through this little miniature vortex, like whoosh, whoosh kind of, and then I was there. Mm-hmm. But when I traveled to see Marshall, it was a longer distance somehow.
A longer journey, right? You said at the time?
The vortex that I would travel through was longer. It was like whoosh, 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 whoosh.
It's kind of like a tunnel almost, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like a black tunnel with lights through it and stuff.
Yeah.
And I found myself in front of Marshall, standing right in front of him. And he was standing on the other side of this table for some reason, and he had this aura of light radiating around him, and he had this most beatific smile on his face that I've ever seen. He was radiantly happy, and I asked him, I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, he said he couldn't be better, and he was so happy to be dead and free of life's woes and cares.
He was also like missing. He was like missing his dog too, because he would always like take his dog on hikes in the morning, I believe.
I don't remember him saying that to me in the astral state, but from what I could tell, he had no trouble being dead. He was radiantly happy about it.
Yeah, I vividly remember giving him acupuncture when I was still an acupuncturist. I was one of the last people to ever see him alive, and it was came as a shock, even though he was a wonderful human being, and I'm so glad, Leslie, that you got to have that encounter with him.
And before I started traveling in the astral realm, I was very afraid of death.
Right.
I had this fear of death. Not unreasonable, I suppose.
Yeah, most people don't know.
Yeah, but I had this dread that maybe the soul wasn't real. But as soon as you start to travel astrally, your soul separates from your body and you send it traveling around. After that, you're pretty sure that you do have a soul. That was something that really comforted me about astral traveling. And then after this encounter with Marshall, I lost my fear of death completely. I mean, I don't think I welcome it, but I'm not sure I would face it with terror any longer. It seems, you gotta, nobody knows how you'll be
It is.
tested until that day comes. But
Yeah, there is a level of comfort that comes with it. A
Yeah.
lot of people just say, okay, well, all right, this is one shot and you're done. Well, what it appears to be is that's not true at all, especially
Yeah.
with the laws of karma, the stuff that I've learned and you've learned with my Tai Chi experience and acupuncture. It's that we do have more shots at it. So yes,
Yeah.
if you kind of get a do-over, So
Well, I don't know about how long it would take him to be recycled and reborn, like we were taught in our Kundalini classes and stuff.
right,
But
right.
but most Eastern religions believe in reincarnation, and I now that I know our souls travel and are separate things from our bodies, I wouldn't be surprised if we're recycled and come back again and again.
Yeah, as you know, my sister keeps in contact with some of our departed family members because now she's taken
Yeah.
up the mantle as being a automatic writer, and that's another whole other story. But yes, it's
Yes.
very comforting to know that souls and family members do stay around,
Yeah.
and they do help you out, and they do give you advice. The hard part is just being able to listen. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
And astral projection is part of it.
And missing them. We still miss them.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that was our
Well, thank you for sharing.
experience for the day. You're
Thank you
welcome.
for sharing, Leslie.
You're very welcome. Usually there's things about, Steve's life, but I was a little bit psychic myself growing up, and I'll be sharing some of that with you guys over
Yes.
time.
People want to hear from you, Leslie.
All right. Well, thank you. And now we'll have a quick word from our sponsor.
Yep.
Welcome back, everyone, to our show, Abductions 101, UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. Our wonderful guest tonight is Eric Freeman. Hi, Eric.
Hey,
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, that's so great.
Hey, Leslie, give me an intro, okay?
Yeah. Eric Freeman Sims possesses over 2 decades of experience as a researcher and investigator. His first encounter with the paranormal occurred at the age of 8 when he witnessed a full-body apparition. Since then, he has continued to explore unexplained phenomenon through his life and during his 20-year career in the field. Eric furthers his explorations of the unusual through research and investigations, serving as the host and producer of the Unseen Paranormal podcast. And we were guests with him on his podcast last year, and we're so happy that he's on with us now. He is also the owner of the historic haunted Night House in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. We'll
That's
have to
really
hear
cool.
all
That's really
about
cool.
that. Yes, indeed. So, welcome to our show. Like I said,
Yeah.
we're so happy to have you.
Yeah, and to add to that list, soon published author. My book comes
Oh,
out February
wonderful.
7th.
You have
So
a book out now, huh?
Yeah, you were mentioning that before.
Is
yeah,
it? Have you officially launched?
yeah, it'll be. You can get the pre-order now on for Kindle, and then it'll be the paperback and hardback will be available February
And
7th.
what is the title of it?
Small Town Haunts and Legends of Tennessee.
Okay.
Wonderful. Small town haunts and legends.
Hauntings of
Haunts and Legends of Tennessee. Yeah,
Haunts and legends. It is haunts and legends of Tennessee.
Okay.
By Eric Freeman Sims. So everybody go out and rush out and get that pre-ordered right away. You'll want that in your collection, I'm sure, as will we.
It'll be in the show notes for sure.
And let's see. I wanted to hear all about your experience at age 8, especially.
That would be a good starting point.
Yeah,
don't you
let's start with how you first got into the paranormal.
yeah. It's so I've always been somewhat of an empath, and it kind of runs in my family. My grandmother, who raised me, was very much an empath. I have aunts who were as well, who have passed on now. But it's kind of run through my family, and I have other family members that don't want to embrace it like I do, or my mom did, or whatever. But the very first major experience I can remember is when I was 8. I was a weird kid that was into like UFOs and paranormal and stuff anyway. And, but I also was a weird kid as in I like to sleep with my door shut. Most kids don't like that, but I always felt more comfortable. And I still do to this day. I have to sleep with the door shut. But I woke up out of a dead sleep and sat straight up in the bed. And the foot of my bed was right across from the door. And my door was wide open. And there was a glowing, like a white light glowing lady standing in the doorway. And as a kid, it scared me. I jumped up, slammed the door, and flipped the light on. And I,
Yes.
yeah, and I didn't wake my parents up or anything. I kind of calmed down over the next little while and went back to sleep with the light on.
Did you ever see her again? Was this a repeating phantom?
No, never saw her again. Never saw her before.
I'd like to ask you a couple questions about that. Do you have any details in your mind at that point, as far as like, did you two like lock eyes, or how tall she was, and ethnicity or anything like that you can recall? I'm always curious.
White with blonde hair. There's a white lady with blonde hair, very fair complexion, with kind of this glowing light around her, white light, goldish light around her.
And about
yeah, it kind of fit.
Like
Probably
like 5.5.
Probably average height of a woman, probably 5'7", 5'8", if I had to guess.
And there's no menacing feeling you got from her, just like this.
No, it just startled me because I woke up, sat straight up in the bed and she's standing in the doorway.
Yeah, I found, for at least in my family bloodline, that a lot of stuff starts to happen somewhere between the ages of 3 and 8. As far as like these experiences. So I totally understand that, and that's really interesting that you had that experience.
Was she wearing old-fashioned clothes at all?
For what I remember, it was like a white, almost linen,
like a toga type of thing, almost.
More
kind of like a flowing dress, I guess. Yeah, more like a nightgown type, silky, flowing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the picture I got in my mind when you said it.
But my parents bought this house. My grandparents who raised me were my parents. They bought this house brand new, and so there's no reason for it to be
somebody who died there or something, right?
Yeah, and as far as I know, on the land really was never, nothing really ever happened on land either. It was just farmland. So before they built this neighborhood in the 70s. So no explanation I've ever found, but that was my first experience, and it's just kind of snowballed from there. I've been haunted the rest of my life. But,
there's the thing that happened to Steve, which is the abduction phenomenon.
Yeah.
With these weird blackout periods, and it's almost like they dampen the consciousness of people. They're able to knock them out.
It's not just me; it was my brother too,
and your father too, as well.
Yeah.
But then there's like our dearly departed, and it seems like our dearly departed, they tend to stick to like locations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me. And whereas the alien abduction phenomenon follows people around, but I'm really fuzzy on the demonology aspect of this whole thing. When demons, they people don't describe ghosts usually as malevolent, and they don't describe aliens that way per se either. Frightening, traumatizing, terrifying, but not evil per se, But the demon phenomenon, people have this overwhelming sense of evil, and I'm just trying to sort out what it is,
Yeah, in my over 20 years of investigating, I've never come across anything I would think was demonic. I think, and I talked to a demonologist on my show, Rich Valdez. He's a real demonologist through the Old Catholic Church of the United States. Right. And he actually went, has done it for 9 years, went through all the training, and he's also a paranormal investigator, and his forte is a ghost as well. And he kind of explained to me a lot of why. He said also in his 20-something years of investigating haunted places, he had never come across anything demonic, and he's a demonologist. He said that,
really?
He said that because the places that we investigate, from his experience, and it made sense to me, people call us in to investigate when they think that's a haunting. But if they think it's something demonic, they go to the church.
They call the priest, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, they'll go to their
right, yeah.
Yeah, they'll go to their religious organization instead of, and that's why we really don't see
Yeah.
cases like that.
That
And
makes
also, I've
sense.
found that there are some nasty spirits out there I've been called nasty things. I've seen people scratched and pushed, and I've been poked and things like that. But my motto has kind of become, if you're an a-hole in life, you're probably gonna be an a-hole in death. Especially for the spirits who haven't crossed over, into the light and all that yet. If they're still earthbound because they're choosing to stay here, why would their attitude change? Because they're probably staying here partially because of that, some unfinished business, or afraid they're going to go to hell, or whatever. So they're not willing to cross over. And
I think
so
sometimes people are blasted out of their bodies
Yeah.
so quickly that they may not realize they're dead.
Yeah.
I notice when I'm doing astral work in the past, the astral body is not quite as cognizant as the regular mind. It's more of an emotional thing.
Yeah.
And it's not fully, like I said, cognizant. It doesn't do math problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that really has to do with practice. I mean, if you're practicing
Yeah.
every day anything,
But
you'll
it's sort
get
of like
more-
a twilight world. And I sometimes wonder if people are launched out of their bodies before they even realize they're dead, like murder
Yeah.
or a car accident,
or in wartime, where,
right,
doesn't
or
matter,
plane lands on your house or something.
Right.
It's like then you don't realize you're dead. Maybe you're lost and stuck, kind of in a loop.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that, yeah. And I think some of those spirits are some people like to think that spirits get stuck here, and I don't think they do. I think they always have a choice. And I think whether they realize they're dead or not, the light is kind of always there for them when they're ready to go to the other dimension, when they're ready to cross over, wherever that goes to. I think some of them need to sort some of their own stuff out before they cross over. But I think there's lots of different reasons why they don't. And I think it's very possible for them not to even realize they're dead for a long, long time. Unless, investigators come in, and you kind of get that, like the movie The Others with Nicole Kidman.
Right.
You kind of get that thing where she doesn't realize that her and her kids are dead.
Yeah.
But she's the one that killed her kids, spoiler alert from the old movie, but she's,
and these obnoxious people are haunting the house. From her point of view,
it's really her and her kids. Yeah. It's her and her kids out in the house. But the reason that she keeps the curtains shut and everything, because she's afraid of the light. And her whole explanation is that her kids are allergic to sunlight when they're not.
Or something.
Right.
That's the light for them to cross over. But she really is afraid that she's going to go to hell for what she did. And I think there's others like that too. I've even heard a story from a medium friend of mine who's a really good medium. And she works in hospice care. And she said she encountered this man in the hospital that she'd never seen before, this little old man, this little man spirit. And she got to talking to him, and he wouldn't cross over because his wife and his mistress had died before him. And he was afraid that they were both waiting on the other side to just like bash him in the head when he crossed over.
One has a frying pan and the other has a rolling pin.
See that Eric is like a whole nother topic, which is true. That if you feel like you've really been bad and hurt people, for instance, one of my fears, if I had been a really bad person, says, "Oh my God, that these people are waiting for me to like judge me and basically torture me, and I really don't want to go there. I don't want to go there.
I don't want to be judged.
if you're like a criminal and you know the things you've done and how many people you've hurt, you think, oh my God. It's like, I don't want to go. I think I'll stick around here for a while. And then you got the other side of the coin,
where my family needs me,
the family still needs you. Like my sister's been finding, and like our 4 generations that we know of for sure, that we've had this family spirit guide called O'Glegley that has been with the Shaw and the Rowe and the Newman and even the Griffiths family for at least 4 generations. That has been both, as you know from our book, they're we call them cousins, and they've been kind of both, helping us and also using us for about 4 generations.
Yeah, they prey on, and they both protect and prey on the family.
So I'm actually happy myself that I've had these experiences. I've just gotten used to them over the generations. I've had this since I was the age of 3, so I'm just gotten used to it.
So, your first experience was at age 8. what did you do after that? Did you immediately follow the occult and the paranormal after that?
Yeah, so when we would have the old book fair come, that kind of threw me into looking for more of those type of books.
Mm,
Even with some of the fiction books like Goosebumps and things like that, because
yeah.
back, I mean, I'm 42, but back when I was in elementary, middle school, we didn't have the internet or anything like that. So to research, you'd have to do, and it was harder to find books back then on the paranormal as well. And so you'd have to do some of the fiction stuff, but like the books like Goosebumps, even though they're fiction, they still taught you about spirits and ghosts and monsters and Bigfoot and things like that. So
Yeah.
I was the weird kid that was always looking for, those type of stories at the book fair or in the library. And then my grandfather who raised me passed away when I was 14, and he was agnostic. And so they kind of raised me to make up my own mind about religion. And so I pretty much have been agnostic my whole life, mostly because of him. And so without the lens of religion, I wanted to find out what happened to him. Did he just nothingness, or,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? There was something, he actually went somewhere else. And so I actually got a group of my friends to go with me. For me, I was kind of on a mission. For them, it was more thrill seeking. They wanted to get scared by seeing a ghost or whatever. And so we started going to cemeteries in the middle of the night in the summer and sneaking into some historic locations. We never vandalized anything or anything like that. We were just curious and started having experiences with things there. And so that kind of really threw me into the investigation part. And I didn't even know when I was a teenager. I mean, there wasn't any ghost shows on TV. I mean, ghost hunters didn't come around until a few years after I was out of high school. And so I didn't even realize until I was about 18 or 19 that people actually got together in groups and did ghost hunting and investigations, and that they went to people's houses to help them, or historic locations to investigate and experience the paranormal.
Yeah.
And
Nimoy did in the mid 70s. They did In Search Of.
Yeah,
Those were some of the first ones that came out.
And then Dark Shadows. We're watching those on
well, no,
on
I'm
Roku right now.
talking about research shows, not.
No, but a spooky ghost, vampire series way back when.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was always interested in Search Of. Reruns and Unsolved Mysteries was big, when I was growing up. And so they always had ghost stuff on there, and UFO and Bigfoot. And so those were always my favorite shows to watch. But then you just get kind of snippets of, okay, I'm aware of Hans Holzer and these other people who have done this, but I didn't know it was a hobby for people, until I got older.
Slowly acquire the equipment necessary to investigate into,
and kind of taught myself my own kind of scientific methods. Looking at the scientific method, taught my own kind of investigation style. And I've played around with all the equipment. I'm not a big equipment person, and I think it's because I started before the equipment. I'm pretty much audio and video type guy.
How does your style vary? How is it different?
Just trying to think outside the box for one, and not playing into the phone apps and the blinky lights they show you on TV. I don't think most of that stuff works. It's hard to prove that any of it works. So I am very much,
and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very much EVP driven, just a plain recording, hear a voice, but different techniques for that. One of the things I've started using is what I call the roundtable EVP, because we always find when we go in groups to investigate a place that the spirits will respond to one person in the group for whatever reason more than the others when they're asking questions. So we'll come up with one question, and we'll have one recorder in the middle of us sitting around in a circle, and we'll all go in clockwise asking the same question. And usually you get pretty good results with them answering one person. And I don't know if it's because that person's kind of on the same vibrating plane as that spirit, or
some affinity they have somehow. Right?
Yeah. Or maybe they like them for some reason, or maybe that's the only person they can hear,
symbiosis in some way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that works pretty well. But just different techniques like that, and trying to think outside the box, and trying to eliminate the human element from it. So
Right.
like a Ouija board, for example. I don't really believe in Ouija boards. If that planchette, if that planchette moves across the board by itself without anybody touching it, okay. But as long as the humans got their hands on it, it's hard for me to believe that it moved itself, because we subconsciously can have micro movements and things like that. And,
Yeah, my sister and I, when I was 16 and she must have been 10, around that time, that we were playing around with a Ouija board up in Sonora, California, which I think is kind of on a ley line anyway, but it was kind of like the same thing, that we wouldn't have our hands after like doing it a couple times. We wouldn't even have our
need to touch
we didn't even
it.
have our fingers on the planchette. Okay, so
and I didn't realize how psychic the family was. Stephen comes from an incredibly psychic family.
Unfortunately,
I mean, I have a touch of it myself, but nothing like these people. they really have it. And then this Ouija board, we inherited the thing, right? So I found it in a family closet.
Yeah.
And we opened it up, and I said, "Oh, I've never done this." And we go to do this thing. I just put the tip of my finger on this planchette, and this thing takes off. I've never, by itself.
Well,
I've never even seen them quite as responsive as this.
Everybody should really do things like Tai Chi and like the Tibetan chanting, because they really do work. I think
it's you guys. I think you somehow instilled this Ouija board with more psychic energy than anyone in the history of time.
As I told you, every woman apart from one on my bloodline side, every woman has been an automatic writer at least.
Yeah.
And we talked about the last show we did how my mom told me, when her mother died, when her father died, when her Uncle Clifford died, well before we got notification from England, and there's so many things that I know as a personal fact.
Yeah.
The things I've had experiences with, that this stuff is real.
And then, we've known for decades that there's this psychic connection to the abduction phenomenon. Right. But it was recently proven, they proved it a long time ago, but it was recently released that they proved it. Luis Elizondo, the head of the ATIP program that released
the former head, right?
That released all those videos to the New York Times.
He just had a new book just come out.
Yeah, we've
read that.
We were just reading his new book, and in it he says that they did MRI scans of abductees
and PET scans,
and they determined that abductees have the same kind of brains that people with ESP have.
Right.
What's the part of the brain?
They have a hyper-developed parahippocampal gyrus, which surrounds. It's a bilateral formation of about 100,000 fibers that surrounds what's called hippocampus. Now, hippocampus,
and it crosses the corpus callosum.
Yeah,
right,
it's bicameral, crosses the corpus callosum, and the hippocampus is the one that basically where you encode memories, especially long-term memories, because memories are best encoded with an emotion chemical associated with a memory. Okay, so anyways, the parahippocampal gyrus is hyper-developed in people that have things like remote viewing techniques or
and
ability.
ESP and
Right. So anyways, to make a long story short, Luis Elizondo was actually taught by people like Pat Price and other people that
other remote viewers. Not Pat Price. He was dead by then.
No, actually, he did talk with Pat Price. Sorry, that was Daryl Anka. Daryl Anka knew Pat Price. Sorry, Daryl Anka is a channeler. He channels Bashar for some people that are actually we've seen Bashar a couple times. But anyway, so it's a technique that can be taught, and once he learned it and started getting good at it, he and his wife started getting visited by these red orbs that would start showing up outside of his house in the late evening, early morning, and it started to really kind of freak them out.
Yeah, now, and whistleblowers have enough trouble, I think, as it is.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Eric, how long have you been doing your podcast?
For almost 5 years.
5 years.
Wow,
you hit the 5-year mark, huh? That's good.
170 something episodes. Yeah.
Is it your first podcast?
I actually, it's the first one I ever hosted and produced myself. Mm-hmm. I learned the podcast world by co-hosting, guest co-hosting sometimes, and producing behind the scenes a podcast for a friend of mine. And it had nothing to do with the paranormal whatsoever. It was called My BFF, and it was a kind of a comedy, ranting podcast with 2 ladies that hosted it.
Well, it still gives you the technical side of it, and
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
how to handle it and deal with it.
Wow, just learn, just basically get in there and you just learn by having to do it. I mean,
And then
yeah,
do it
that's
towards
tough.
you, then use it for your own interests. You know,
yeah.
it's smart.
That's
Yeah.
tough. Yeah.
You know, I had
Wow.
a person tell me a ghost story one time. He lived on in a Queen Anne mansion, um, just the top floor under the attic, but the top floor just below the attic is where he
Yeah.
lived, and there was a stairwell going up to the attic. And in the middle of the night, he kept hearing this person running up and down the stairs late at night, in the wee hours of the night.
12 midnight, 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
Right?
and he determined eventually that no one in the house was doing this, and
Yeah.
he set up a communication thing with this obvious ghost that was running up and down the stairs. He would shout through the wall to it, and it would stop running right on the other side where his voice was, and it would respond with knocks. If he could, one for yes, two for no kind
Yeah.
of communication.
Yeah, simple communication, right?
And he communicated with this thing for quite some time, but then at one point he said, "Do you realize you're a ghost and that you're dead and that you should be going into the light? You shouldn't, stay here. You shouldn't be stuck here like this, right?" And the ghost vanished after that. It never happened again. So I think he basically performed a service for this ghost,
Yeah.
to get him to finally go into the light.
Yeah, he or she, yes.
But the sad thing is like, what about these places that have haunted houses and are marketing the fact that they have a ghost in their house, right? And they probably don't want people coming in and saying, here's how to move on,
Well,
ghost.
that's part of one of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, you'll
greed,
steal their bread and
greed,
butter,
so, yeah.
away,
Yeah. Well, we bought the Night House in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. 80% of what we do as ghost hunters is history. The other 20% is trying to connect to that history through, trying to connect to the spirits.
Yeah. Do your research into who it is, maybe.
Yeah. And we have opened the house to investigation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's my belief, and just from my experiences with the spirits in the house, that they are completely fine with what we're doing. All the money that we make goes right back into restoring the house. And so we're not planning on getting rich, and we don't charge exorbitant amounts of money, to come in and investigate. And we do history tours, and we're focused on history as well. But this place for 200 years has been a residence. So the story of and one family lived there from 1860 until 1945.
Do you have more than one spirit in the house? Do you think?
One family,
Yeah.
with multiple spirits?
Yeah, there's multiple spirits in the house. There's at least 3 intelligent ones that we know of that we've come across, that they are aware that they're at the house. They're fine with being at the house. I've had 2 separate independent medium friends of mine who don't even know each other, who have come up with the same names and said the same thing.
Really?
That, yeah. And they're
Wonderful.
not. One of them is working on himself before he crosses over and working out some stuff in his life, but he's fine with being at the house.
Okay.
The lady that we have, we believe, was a domestic servant back in the 50s and 60s, and she loves the house. That's why she's still there. She's completely cognizant. She has crossed over and came back and stays at
Really?
the house. Yeah, and we have another gentleman who's never crossed over, but he's very fond of the house, and so he
Right.
sticks around. And then we have some other spirits that pop in and out from the other side. But
Children? Any children?
we've come across a few African American children. When we've asked if they were ever slaves or enslaved, they've told us they don't know what we're talking about. So
Really?
that would tell me that they're from because after the Civil War, the Knight family in the 1870s, 1880s had a family of former slaves that lived with them that were domestic servants, and the mother and the 6 kids worked in the house, and the father helped work the land, but they were free, because they were emancipated. But So
Still
we
tenant
think it's
farmers. Yeah.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. They
Tenant
lived,
farmers. Mhm.
yeah, they had their own house and they had their own plot of farmland they could farm, and they got paid to work in the house and stuff. And so we think maybe it's one or two of their kids, because they say that they're African American,
Mhm.
you know, they're black, and we have enough communication to understand that, but they don't know what we're talking about when we ask about slavery. But those
That's
kids,
a
you
good
know,
thing.
yeah,
Less
if in the 18
resentment.
yeah, in the 1870s, you know, even if they were babies when in the 1860s during the Civil War, you know, they wouldn't remember anything about being a slave.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's some
Mhm.
children. We have some other spirits that are out on the grounds that we haven't really made contact with. There's one particular guy who's an intelligent spirit, and I've seen him. My mother-in-law has seen him in the middle of the day. We've both seen him in the middle of the day at different
No
times.
kidding.
And he hangs out outside the house, and he was some sort of farm hand or like farm manager for the nights. And then we have some newer generation. After the night sold the house off, we have a couple of people that are from another family that live there, and I don't ever say one of their names because they still have family living in the area.
Hmm.
So just to be respectful. But if
Yeah.
I thought if I thought it was the spirits didn't like what we were doing, I definitely would not be no, I mean, I'm definitely not exploiting them, you know. And I tell them, we know you're not a circus act, but you want to tell your story. There are people
Right.
coming in that want to hear your story, you know. And so when they ask you questions, you know, do your best to answer. And so there's been a little bit of a learning curve because nobody's ever come in and investigated before we bought the house. And so now they're starting to get comfortable with communicating in various ways, whether it be through
Okay.
Knox. We started out with Knox,
Right.
and now we're starting to get the roundtable EVP stuff going and other EVPs, and also the spirit box. They're starting to come across fairly clear on it. And so they make all kinds of noises on our video cameras.
My
Um,
sister and her husband in northern England
Yeah, they
have
do.
found
Ghost
the same
hunting.
thing because their company is called or it's
Ghostly
called
locations.
Ghostly Locations, and they've done a lot of that kind of stuff, and you know
Yeah.
they get some pretty straightforward answers
Yeah.
frequently. Again, my sister,
Yeah.
when she was young, she was a born again Christian, and she wanted to have nothing to do with stuff.
The
And
paranormal. Yeah,
after my
nothing.
mom died because of the situation we talked about last time about my brother and my dad and my mom all dying like within 3 months of
Yeah.
each other in 2017, and it wasn't very pleasant. But she went through a real terrible time of feeling a little bit guilty.
She suffered a lot of grief.
She
yeah.
suffered a lot of
Yeah.
grief, and so she picked up the mantle, and she is actually turned out to be pretty good. But it took some practice.
Yeah.
It did take
Yeah.
some practice.
It's interesting that old Glegley, the family spirit guide, Karen his sister Karen kind of didn't want to become an automatic writer like
No.
every woman in the family had been,
Yeah.
for generations. She kind of resisted it. But then after her mother died, she felt a kind of a pull towards it.
Yeah.
And it's my guess that old Glegley always wants at least one person in the family to be able to communicate through.
Yeah. Like now it's been passed down to you. You've inherited it now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's
Deal.
picked up
Yeah.
the mantle, so to speak.
Just to be clear, my mother was killed by my brother. Okay, so
Yeah.
so
It was-
there is that too. There's this
we
whole thing.
think that I mean in when Karen talks to him, the way he's feeling about it in the afterlife. Philip is the one who killed everybody, himself and his mother.
Yeah.
He was doing it out of mercy. I guess she was just miserable, and they were
Oh.
both physically miserable, sick and ill, and just wanted it to end it all. So that's the take we're getting on it now.
Also, old Glegley says that she asked old Glegley that
Are you an alien?
And he got kind of insulted. He
was
says, "No, I'm not an
Not an
alien.
alien?
I've been with the Shaws since the beginning."
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway, so
yeah.
that's part of the crux of our book and our research is that we, I said no, old Glegley is not an
Yeah.
alien. He's actually a breakaway part of the human
Race. That's kind of our theory.
So that actually, when she, asked him the question, whatever. And she's used the Ouija boards and, of course,
Yeah.
the spirit boxes and, FLIR and, things like that, the basic, tech. And, yeah, they come across some pretty interesting stuff.
So
Yeah.
how old is the Night House? Is it from the 1700s?
It's 200 years old, right?
Yeah, so it was built between 1815 and 1820. And so a little over 200 years old.
So
Is
after
the-
the Alamo and
Yeah.
Before the Alamo. 1850 is Alamo's 1823 or something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was after the Alamo.
Right after the War of 1812, yeah. Yeah, it's the house is the oldest still standing structure in Christian County, Kentucky,
Oh,
and one of the
okay.
oldest in the top 20, still standing in all of Kentucky.
Is it a bit of a money pit?
It isn't. It's
They
not
tend to be.
actually. It
Really?
the owners we bought it from actually put a lot of love and time into restoring it and rehabbing it.
Oh,
It's a
good.
very interesting house. It's 6 different levels.
No kidding.
But
Wow.
it's 2.5 stories.
Wire it? Did they put in electricity?
They rewired most of the house. We went in and finished the rest of the modern wiring, and then we basically traded out all the plumbing for modern plumbing.
Do you live in
So-
the structure?
No, we live. We actually live an hour and a half away.
I see.
Yeah,
How many square feet is it roughly? It's 6 stories,
6
right?
levels. Wow, must be huge.
5,600 square feet.
Oh.
So each level is a half level. So you start with the cellar, which is 10 foot underground, but it's only under half the house. And then you go up the stairs, and the basement's only under half the house. And then you come up to the ground floor, and so on up to the attic. The attic runs the full length of the house, but it's only half of the house. If that makes
Half the
sense.
width or something.
Yeah.
Half the square footage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Is it
it
like
kind of
old colonnade kind of porch, like
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the originally it was a federal style, so it was just a red brick, very plain facade. And then the 1860s, when the Knights moved in, Greek Revival was very popular. So they built the big 2-story white columns on the side, and they built the front porch on. That's all Greek Revival. And they put in these the fancy parlor has 2-foot tall baseboards and the big thick trim, and they put in they changed out all the mantles in the fireplace are Greek Revival. And so, yeah. So the house has been changed many times. It's been a residence. Every family that's lived there has kind of changed it to fit their needs. So who knows what the original floor plan was. And the first owner's name that we come across was in 1844. We don't even know who originally built the house in 1815. So I haven't come across that name yet, but hopefully in my research I'll find it.
Steve had a great haunting experience.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course.
Would you share it with us, dear?
Oh, this was 1976, mid-July of 1976 on Catalina Island off the coast of, basically Malibu.
Yeah.
20 miles off the coast, 26 miles across the sea. Santa Catalina is waiting for me. Anyway, so my dad and I, my dad was the master cabinet maker and trained in England. And I was the apprentice. And I was just before my 16th birthday, and we spent 10 days remodeling part of the Hollings. Was the Hollings?
The Christ house.
The Christ house, yes. But it was formerly the, yeah, you've got it there somewhere, right?
This, I found this thing in Steve's possessions. This is the house. See, it's like
the Holly Hill house.
Queen Anne design
Right.
on the thing there.
Right.
And it was owned at the time by a guy named Christ.
Vic Christ.
Yeah.
Victor Christ, yeah.
But,
yeah, there's a good picture.
and
right
Stephen
there.
was doing this restoration work. See, there's the house.
Wow.
And
to the
if you
left.
look, there's the kitchen part. See it right there?
Yeah.
The cabinets. Stephen was
I was redoing the
working
cabinets,
on
right.
those cabinets.
My dad was working on the cupola, which is the top part.
Yeah,
there.
that
Yeah, the big
column at
round,
the top
yeah.
of the
All right. So,
thing,
anyways,
yeah.
this was midday. This was maybe 12 noon, 1 o'clock, and it was just midday, and I was I'm almost 16, so I'm really into Chicago at that time because it's 1976, and they're a really popular group, and I'm a musician, so I was listening to "Feeling Stronger Every Day" on this cassette tape, right? and just working in the kitchen, and I see this lady that looks just absolutely just like black and white.
Well, you said you felt cold first.
What? Well, of course, yeah, I felt cold first, and I saw from the back door that was facing towards the east, sorry, there was this woman of medium height that looked like she was wearing these old-time clothes, like black and white, and she just walked and floated past the back door, which I was maybe 20 feet away from it, and just kind of gave me this dirty look. What are you listening to, and what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing in my kitchen?
In my kitchen, right? And she just floated past. This is during full day, okay?
Yeah,
and
middle of the day.
This was private property, so the first thing I did, I said, I'm pretty fast. It's at 15, So anyway, so I got up and I ran to the back door and opened it, and there's nothing there. Okay.
Yeah.
This is like there's no place for her to hide, no secret passageways, no like rocks or anything like that. And
She
I
just
got
vanished,
there.
yeah.
I got there within like 3 or 4 seconds. So there's no way this older lady. And so
This is
anyway,
what it looked like back
this
then.
is kind of what it looked like. But anyways,
Oops, there
the
went
interesting thing is that I had told my sister about it, my dad and my brother and whatever, and I kind of forgotten about it. But when we started doing our research, I thought, you know what? Is there like a picture, like who were the people that lived there before we started doing the remodeling?
So we did some research, and we found that there was only one woman. Her name was Jenny Giddings, and she was the only woman to have lived in the house for any appreciable amount of time.
For like about 40 years.
And we found she was a patriarch of the Pasadena, social...
socialite. She was a socialite.
Socialite back then. Mm-hmm. And she had written and this was like their summer house.
Yeah.
And she'd written a book, something to do with Pasadena society. And we managed to find the book, and her face was on the inside flap of the inside cover of the book.
It was a side view picture.
And then we got a picture of her, and sure enough, it was the woman that Stephen saw.
It's the exact woman that I saw. And
Yeah.
It was almost, it made my skin a little bit, kind of like goosebumpy.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh my God, this is the picture I've had in my mind since I was almost 16 years of age.
Right.
And it was a full body apparition during the day. And like I say, it was like watching an old timey woman with that hairstyle they had back at that time. And just looking at me,
Daggers.
like saying, what kind of outlandish music are you listening to?
And
Because,
it's funny that Catalina Island has an opera house. It was kind of a weird thing for them to build way back then, because it was kind of like a remote place, more rough.
Avalon's a town.
Kind of a rough place, and somebody built this opera house out there, and she was one of the patrons of the opera house, being a society marm for Avalon as well.
She had money. She's a socialite. Yeah.
And she died in 1955, so she would have had no idea about rock and roll or any of that.
Very well, Rock Around the Clock with Bill Haley in the comments. And Chuck Berry had just barely started coming out. So,
right.
Yeah.
And so, I think she looked at him like, what the hell music are you listening to? What the hell?
Yeah, and if she was an older lady, she wouldn't have listened to that anyway.
Exactly.
None of that newfangled music.
Yeah, when I saw her, she looked to me like she was 65 or 70.
And see right here at the end of the there, there's this structure right there.
Yeah,
that's the opera house. It was across the bay. And a rather large, music facility for being such a rough area. Yeah. I was wondering, I don't know for a fact if she was integral in getting the thing built or whatever, but she was definitely involved in it as
she supported
of the arts,
Yes.
So, are any of the spirits you deal with, are they ever like angry like the ones Stephen saw, or it seems like you got pretty happy spirits there?
We have one who has his issues. He gets angry and kind of bangs around sometimes. We made the maid that we have, the domestic servant. Her name is Georgie, who's still there, who we believe still there.
Right.
I believe we made her mad. We decided to do a little experiment because I've been told by the 2 different mediums I talked to that she's a busybody. And so she runs around the house making sure everything's good. She hates the way that I make a bed. She complains about that. But we decided to open the drawers in the buffet in the dining room and open some of the dresser drawers and stuff in the bedroom. She made noise, so much noise in the house for the next 3 days that my phone was constantly going off from the cameras picking up the noise, the sound detection, until we went up there and closed all the doors and drawers. She was not happy about it at all. But then yesterday I was up there because we had a reporter.
Mess.
Yeah, yesterday I was up there. We had a reporter that came from the county newspaper, and it was just me and her. And then she left. And I always talk to them and tell them, hey, I'll be back in a few days. Y'all take care of the house, whatever. And I always tell them to communicate with me through the camera or while I'm here, because things happen while we're there as well. We hear voices and things like that. But I'm locking up and I'm talking to them, and I said, take care of the house, and hopefully y'all like that the house is going to be featured in the newspaper, the county newspaper. And then I heard a big loud bang behind me in the dining room, and there's nothing, to bang or out of place. So that was my sign that we're good. It was kind of a, yes, we agree, we're good. So
good.
Okay,
yeah.
Sorry, we do have to take a commercial break here.
A quick commercial
We're already
break.
almost 45 minutes into the show, and we haven't even done one commercial.
All right, so we'll be back in a moment, everyone. So thank you so much, Eric, for letting us pause for a moment.
Hang on. Yeah. 10 seconds.
And we're back. Welcome back, everyone, with our wonderful guest, Eric Freeman Sims. It's Eric Freeman Sims, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know about the Sims part until you sent me the bio. I'm sorry about that. I just saw Eric Freeman on all the social media and stuff.
Yeah. That's my married name. Well, I guess my legal name is still Eric Freeman, but I haven't changed it yet. So my pseudonym, I guess, is Eric Freeman Sims, on the podcast and on my book and all that stuff.
So I'm assuming that you probably had either some guests or some experience with Bigfoot or giants. Would you like to talk about that at all?
Yeah. I've been fascinated with Bigfoot for a long time. I've never had my own experience with Bigfoot, but I've had plenty of guests that I've talked to over the past few years, and have gotten to meet, going to conventions and things, and pick their brain about Bigfoot. Right. Bigfoot's a big thing in Tennessee where I live, and you have the Tennessee Wildman back before the term Bigfoot came around. Right. The Cherokee who lived in East Tennessee in the Appalachian Mountains of Tennessee and North Carolina had a huge belief in Bigfoot, that type of creature, and their belief I find very interesting because it matches with both Bigfoot camps. So you have the woo, what they call the woo Bigfoot camp, that thinks Bigfoot's a supernatural creature, right, because of the cloaking and all that stuff. And then you have the other physical being camp that thinks it's a real living, breathing creature. But the Cherokee belief kind of bridges that gap, and they thought of Bigfoot as being a very physical creature that they lived side by side in the woods with, but had one foot in the spirit realm. And so they thought Bigfoot was able to travel between the two realms, and that was Bigfoot's, that creature's special power. And
we're in more of the physical camp ourselves.
Well,
I am too.
We think that aliens are not really aliens. We think they're our cousins, and we think they have underground bases all over the world.
Yeah, cities.
And we think that they actually utilize the Bigfoots as sentries and as foragers, possibly for information, also information gatherers. And we think that we think they're physically real, but they're in league with our cousins, and utilize their superior technology in order to disappear.
Yeah.
And you know,
Well, they've been seen many times, associated with UFOs and cattle mutilations.
Yeah.
Right.
And we actually met. I like telling this story. I just will do it. July the 4th, we were in Big Bear, California, and trying to promote our book and that kind of stuff, which was an interesting story in and of itself. Which I'm going to tell it. Okay, real quick. Okay, so we had our tent there in our booth, and we weren't selling anything apart from one book, right? So we're getting ready to close up. It was like it was a bust, okay?
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of the other vendors about, Bigfoot and other kind of things like that, right? And this guy happened to walk by, and his name was Jeremy. Never met him before in my life, and he said, I'm interested in what you're saying, and I'm a producer. We do my partner and I, we do documentaries. And, I gave him a card and whatever, and he said, I didn't think he was, completely serious, but, I said, okay, he'll get in touch with us and whatever. And so, so we had this connection, right? Then a week or two later, he said, can I come by on X date, which was like around about August, like late August.
Yeah.
All right. So he was going to say, I'll come down because he said that, he lived in Big Bear, and he wasn't, had no problem like driving to where we live. Was like an hour and a half drive. So that's great. So
I thought you were going to talk about the Athabascan guy that saw Bigfoot two
right.
times.
The Athabascan guy. He and his wife.
We met Big Bear too.
Yeah, they were Athabascan Indians, Native American Indians, which is a tribe that goes all the way from Alaska down to parts of
Colorado. I think.
Colorado, right? So he was making these wonderful fishing lures for fly fishing, and we just happened to be like trying to watch the fireworks, right? And he started talking about Bigfoot, and just like matter of factly that that he's seen Bigfoot himself 3 times in his life, and the most recent time he was on a 15-hand horse, and he's a pretty big guy, right? So basically he was like about like 8 or 8.5 foot eye level, right? And he just came across Bigfoot, and they were just looking at each other eye level. And,
are they like in Tennessee? There must be the smaller ones, right? Like the 7-8 foot ones.
The skunk apes,
right?
Yeah. They're typically around 7-8 foot is the ones.
Right.
So skunk ape is kind of
really tall ones.
There's a whole formula for that. The further north you go, the bigger any animal gets, because
like bears get bigger.
Right.
Everything gets bigger
because the insulation factor. That's the reason why they get bigger.
Okay.
All right. So anyways, he said that Native Americans, they have a different view. They see the Bigfoot as being brothers, as men of the mountains. They see them as basically being almost like cousins in a way.
Right.
All right. So they don't have this whole fear associated with them that that a lot of people do. Caucasians and whatnot. So anyway, I was trying to get to was that we did this documentary, Who They Are. This came out a few months ago, and I'd never met this guy before in my life, and I had this dream that he was sitting down at our table, and we were talking about 2 very specific things. And I told Leslie about my dream, because I do get precog stuff. People may not believe it, but I do get it. Okay. And I told her, said, when he gets here, she barely ever met this guy. I said, ask him these 2 questions. Ask him if he's having a strong pull towards having to go to Arizona really soon, like in the next week, and that he's got physical problems going on with his left shoulder and left chest. And I had her ask him those 2 specific questions, because when I get these these precog things, they're almost always right. And he said, well, how did you know that? And it's like, I just, this 2 days before, you were sitting at the table right here, and we were talking, and you told me these 2 things. Okay.
But let's get back to Bigfoot. I wanted to ask, so you've met many people who've seen it, and what's your take on it? Are you more the physical or the woo side?
I'm more the physical, because of some of the incredible stories and evidence that I've seen that people have gotten. One of the more incredible stories, I had a guy on Stanley Milford Jr., and some people may be familiar with him from Skinwalker Ranch. Him and his partner are the Navajo Rangers. They're the Navajo Paranormal Rangers.
Sure.
And I had him on my show because his book came out in October of last year. And there was a case, and he has pictures in the book of this. There was a case that they went to on the Navajo Reservation, which is they patrolled 27,000 square miles. And they did all the paranormal stuff, him and his partner. And they went to a Bigfoot case that they took a photograph of. This family was being terrorized by Bigfoot, and that's why they call the Paranormal Rangers the Navajo Rangers, to come in and maybe put it down or whatever, and they're on the reservation. So they normally don't mess with Bigfoot because, like you're saying, they think, they're brothers, cousins, and they kind of like, we leave you alone, you leave us alone. But they're being terrorized, and their animals are getting slaughtered and things. But the side of their trailer was a handprint imprinted in the metal where the Bigfoot was beating on the side of this trailer.
Whoa. And
there's a picture of this in his book. And they followed the footsteps up the creek until they just suddenly ended. And it's this incredible story of them trying to track this Bigfoot and stuff, and the evidence that these people had of being terrorized by this thing for whatever reason. They don't know what they did to anger it, or for it to do what it was doing to them. But just evidence like that people get, and the footprints, and even the DNA that we've been starting to get that is points towards primate, but it's no known primate or
an unknown primate.
Yeah. And with a little bit of like human DNA in there, similar, very similar.
Right.
So,
which I think, we think that the Sumerians, the thing was Sitchin, and 300,000 years ago, the Anunnaki were supposed to be uplifting humanity. From Homo erectus into Homo sapien, because they needed this workers, right?
And
right?
then from there, Homo sapiens sapien.
And I would think that what a nice little myth this is, except that we're actually finding some evidence in the human genome of CRISPR technology editing, done to us.
It corroborates basically, exactly. It shows that the neocortex, there was a cut and paste job done at a certain point, that we can verifiably see that. We also, with environmental studies, like say in Northern California, we now know that we're finding the DNA that also corroborates the fact that there is an unknown primate that is mixed with human DNA.
And we think, so 300,000 years ago, if this is true, if they were really doing this to this, they were uplifting us.
Right.
I think they might have also uplifted the Bigfoot because, they're looking for a worker race, right? Well, Bigfoots would be a pretty good candidate for a worker race. They're intelligent. They're ridiculously strong.
Well, they would have used either Gigantopithecus or Australopithecus robustus.
Robustus. Back then,
one of the two.
There were the two, what we think might have been the progenitors before Bigfoot.
Right.
Are those two creatures. Gigantopithecus was one possibility, but also Australopithecus robustus is a little bit more like a cross between a man and an orangutan. It's
but the Gigantopithecus was at least 10 foot tall.
So we think it's very possible that they were uplifting both of us at the same time. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I've kind of had that idea, that same idea since I was a kid, of looking at visitation from UFOs or aliens, or even interdimensional type of beings, because we're missing a lot in that family tree of evolution to go from some sort of ape into humans, right? And also the other argument that I find pretty compelling is if we came from chimpanzees, which we share 98% of our DNA with, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why is there not evolved chimpanzee, right? That's more human, right? If chimpanzees have been around for 100,000 years, and evolution is where we evolved from them to humans, why is there not a middle ground there? You know what I'm saying?
Why are there still chimpanzees then?
Why are they still chimpanzees and they haven't evolved, in between them and us?
And there's some enormous differences in the. There's two what you call missing links in the human evolutionary chain. between Homo erectus and Homo sapien, this is where we think this uplifting thing happened. There's a pretty big gap here in the globular shape of the brain and the ability to speak, we think.
And
Also the ability to reason, to it's abstract thinking. We went from not being able to look at a picture of something and see it. Like when we look at a picture of an apple, we can see that it's an apple, right? But that kind of thinking, looking at a flat surface and making that leap to it looks like something else. This is an enormous difference in the brain, and we're talking about millions of years of evolution happening in just 50,000 years about, right?
Right.
And then there's this other enormous gap between Australopithecus and Homo habilis. Homo habilis has a foot like a human does, and Australopithecus has a foot like a chimpanzee does. These are two big differences in this enormous difference in just the structure of the foot, which would be millions of years in evolution before you'd go from one to the other.
Yeah, Cremo's book, Forbidden Archaeology, talks about that. Yeah. And also, too, as we know, all these unusual finds that are being found, even like where my family kind of grew up in Sonora, California, in Tuolumne County. There's like Table Mountain where they're doing mining, right? And they were finding these artifacts that were in 250,000-year-old soil.
Human skulls, What's that doing here?
I found the out-of-place objects I find very fascinating. They found like a modern-day hammerhead.
That hammer that's 140 million years old.
And I found that incredible because they can explain it. And also with the finding the missing links, every time they find a skull or a jaw, it completely wipes out what they say they've known. Right. And that's what pisses me off. Well, that's what pisses me off about archaeologists and stuff is that they think they know everything. And that it can't change. We're lucky
if we have 2% of the fossil record,
Like you're saying, Eric, when they came up with the Göbekli Tepes, then as far as like the cradle of civilization and how old we go back, all of a sudden it goes back to 12,000 years old, and you're saying that all of a sudden that's like, oh man, this is indisputable evidence we have that it's a lot older. And these professors have been teaching for 20, 30, 40 years, and they have to say, just like the guys who've been teaching Egyptology, that now they're still trying to hold on to the fact that, we built the pyramids with copper with copper tools.
I know.
I mean, it's ludicrous.
Yeah, we have a whole chapter in our book about so many impossible things, because it's like the Inca, they keep attributing Sacsayhuamán and Pumapunku and Machu Picchu. They try and attribute it to the Inca, and they were bronze tool users, and there's just no way. The stones of Sacsayhuamán, for instance, are made out of andesite, which is a 7 on the Mohs scale, which is
it's like the hardest granite.
Hardest granite is a 7 on the Mohs scale, and so
it's not possible.
You could whack it all day with a bronze tool, and it'll just wreck the tool.
Or take sand and rub the sand on it. Well, that's not going to do.
Are you kidding? Yeah, right. Yeah. And to the precision, to the micron. Perfect, cutting,
and also setting it up on the cardinal points, and it's all you have to have a blueprint and a plan.
But how about these star-shaped holes? We don't even have a drill bit that can do a star-shaped hole through a ginormous piece of granite. And then also I was reminded the other day, somebody put up a meme about it. It wasn't necessarily a meme; it was like a history thing. But one of the pyramids, the granite steps are melted inside.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how do you melt granite without having some incredible source of heat, a laser or something like that? Some sort of plasma.
Sacsayhuamán.
Yeah, we think Sacsayhuamán. All of the stones are rounded. Yeah. Almost like they were and kind of like fused together. It's almost like somebody built the thing out of rough stones and then superheated the wall to where they all kind of
Well,
rounded a little, you know.
and then in modern
softened.
modern times, you have the Coral Castle.
Yeah.
That guy built it by himself.
I saw that back in 1979 with my dad
Steve
at the
loves
Fallbrook
that.
house. My dad and I
Coral Castle.
we just happened to come across it just watching on the TV set, you know, just at 8 o'clock at night, and we just happened to see this, and our minds were blown. I've known I always cite that. It's like, you know what, we can do this kind of stuff, but if we understand the technology, we can do it.
Yeah.
This guy did it back in the 1920s and 1930s.
Well, one of the things I've always thought too is that if he rediscovered it, the technology,
Right.
it had to be pretty simple because this was just a simple guy. I think he was a mechanical engineer or something. So he wasn't
He had
like
two PhDs, I believe.
Well,
One
yeah,
was in
2
magnetics,
degrees. Yeah.
magnetics, and one in engineering.
Right.
But I always thought with even the Egyptians, even if the Egyptians are ones that built the pyramids,
Yeah.
we're surrounded by magnetism. I mean, the Earth, you know, we're
Right.
constantly. So why could you harness that? If we can get two magnets to repel each other, and you can get them to float, right? With a super cooled magnet, and you can harness that power to do maglev trains and things like that.
For sure.
Then why couldn't you harness the natural magnetism of the Earth to lift heavy objects
Yeah.
with
It
a
feels
simple
like
machine?
We're just missing something
you know.
simple. You
It,
know?
it
Yeah.
is. You know, we have to take one more break.
One more commercial break.
Just one more commercial break, and then
Sorry,
we'll finish
everybody.
up.
We'll
Okay.
be back in a moment.
Okay.
And we're back.
Hello again.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting. But
Yeah, you know, the Earth is a natural magnet. Even
Yeah.
Tesla absolutely knew this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's true that, you know, there are multiple stories, like even in the Bible, different talking about the sound of horns being blown, and, you know, rocks, you know, rising up, and
Yeah.
it's true that if you can find the right vibrational frequency of whatever element it may be, you can literally neutralize the gravitational effect upon that element.
It seems
And-
if you could just harness the gravity of the planet or the magnetism of
Right.
the planet, that you could launch the pyramid if you wanted to, let alone
Right,
hold it. You
right.
know?
Well, and also if you think of it, I mean, down to the atomic level, every atom has electrons that is working off a positive and negative
Mm-hmm.
Right.
as they flow around the nucleus. So if you could somehow, on that microscopic level, use that electromagnetism at an atom at a time in that ginormous rock, that's a lot of fucking atoms. I'm sorry, excuse my
Yeah.
language. That's a
Right.
lot of atoms.
Right, it is.
To raise something, that's a lot of magnetism if you could harness that atomic kind of magnetism in that way. But even like you're saying with sound and vibration, they found that, you know, there's crazy things you can do if you find the resonant frequency of whatever material that you're dealing with. And
Right.
yeah, they earthquake machines and things like that. Tesla was messing with, and
Yeah, I have that book.
yeah.
And you know, we see a lot of UFOs that hover directly over old megalithic sites
And ley line areas.
old megalithic pyramids, stuff of like Teotihuacan. There's a lot frequently, you know, tourist photos of the pyramids show
Right.
a UFO up in the
Right,
sky, and then
right.
sometimes it's a video camera. And so one time this guy was shooting video of it, and it was there, and then the next frame it was gone. That's how fast they move, you know.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of UFO witnesses and abduction people on your show too?
I have not. I'm kind of I'm picky about who I have on my show. And I think we talked about this a little bit when I had y'all on, or we talked about it off air. Because I want to talk to credible people who have a good grasp on what they're talking about, and no matter what subject it is, with the paranormal. And I don't mind kind of getting off in the weeds and the esoteric, but I want people who are well educated, who educated themselves very well. I don't want the guest, even if they may, even for their benefit, to come off as like tinfoil hat conspiracy theory crazy people when they probably really did have this experience, you know. So for my benefit and theirs, I would not want to put somebody like that on air, you know, who is not used to doing what we do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
and the research that we've done and things like that and the knowledge that we have. So I'm very picky. So I haven't had but a handful of people talking about UFOs for one.
Mhm.
Just because you can get in the weeds so easily with UFOs, especially because of the disinformation that's been put out there by the government, and the media's made fun of it for 75 years now. They made a big joke out of it, like which mayor was it that came out in the big alien suit after they thought he was going to take the sighting seriously?
It was the governor of Phoenix.
The governor.
I mean, of Arizona.
Arizona, right?
Yeah,
He was
he
one of
called
the
a
witnesses
conference
to the
and
Phoenix Lights.
Yeah.
And he was just trying to. He was actually quite freaked out by the incident, but he wanted to kind of make light of it to keep the panic down.
And of course, after he was no longer the governor, he came forward and said,
that was freaky.
I actually did see this, and it was mostly translucent.
I thought it was kind of an interesting incident, because, that UFO started in Nevada.
Yeah,
and
which is interesting.
And it crossed the entire state of Arizona and entered into Mexico, making sure to go slowly over the Capitol so that the most number of people could see it. I thought, what are is this alien kids joyriding and daddy's ship or something?
See, that's
right.
This is the thing where it seems suspicious to me that it started in southern Nevada. Okay, all right, well, that's kind of where Area 51.
Area 51,
52 is okay. So
no, 51
right,
is right.
51, but there's Area 52 over there too.
That's over by Salt Lake. Yeah.
Okay, right. Well, there's
anyway.
a couple areas. It doesn't matter, but it was always suspicious to me. But the thing is, this happened in the mid 1990s. Okay, so all right. So, but we know there's been stuff, the trans medium stuff. If anybody really wants to see a UFO, like I've seen a USO, I saw that back in when the Red Sox were playing the Yankees in October of 2004, right?
Yeah, lots of people see them coming up out of lakes, out of the ocean.
Off the coast.
One of his
Catalina
was up out of the ocean.
Catalina Island is a huge magnet for USOs right now, right? That's where the military's gotten a lot of their videos from. Is off the coast of Catalina Island.
Yeah, I saw this one with a witness with the valet. Yep. When I was getting my car from the chart house, if people want to know where I was, we're out on a highway 1. Okay, and it just said the chart house is like 9 o'clock at night, and the Red Sox and the Yankees were playing for the pennant, right? So I know what time of the year it was, and this freaking UFO came up out of the ocean, maybe a mile off the coast, and it was a saucer shape, and it was white, and it came up pretty big, and kind of hovered, and it kind of did its like zigzag moves, and then it went off to
shot
the north.
Away north at
Wow.
supersonic
So
speed.
I looked at the valet Hispanic guy, and I said, did you see that? He said, oh yeah.
Which was a dumb question because his eyes were as big as saucers.
Big as saucers too. No pun intended, actually.
Did you see that?
Yeah. It's like and this is I didn't know at the time. We weren't writing the book. We didn't even think about writing the book at the time. But it was just like, okay, yeah. All right, so it's like, finally, really, the only reason really why we wrote the book is because of all the things that had happened to myself and my family over all these generations that I really needed to get some closure for myself. And then Leslie saw 2 UFOs with me.
For years I was listening to Stephen tell me these stories of his abduction experiences and his 3 UFOs that he had seen by the time, I had seen my first. I hadn't seen anything. And I was actually getting a little jealous. I wanted something to happen to me, And then finally it was there. Just a white light in the sky. And
it was much more than that.
But I mean, the thing took off at supersonic speed and was gone over the northern horizon.
Yeah, we both saw it. We were driving back from our ARC group. It was.
But the point is that after I finally saw my first one, I believed Stephen before that, but I could only believe him like 98%. There was still that tiny little kernel of doubt,
Right. Yeah.
But after that, after I saw it and believed him 100% after that.
Yeah, once you try and put okay, it's not an airplane, it's not a helicopter, it's not behaving, it's soundless, it's getting bigger, and then it goes off, and it's not a laser.
Yeah.
This is 2005.
It was 05, yeah.
Yeah, it was
so
January 05. Yeah.
So after I finally saw one, and now I believed 100%. I started stepping up our research a little bit. I was the journalist in the family, and so journalists are good at research, and so our research took on a little bit more of a systematic approach after that. But it still was 20 years in the before we felt ready to write the book.
And I actually started a lot of my research back in the early 90s because I started way before.
Yeah, earlier than that.
of a very bizarre thing that happened to me in January of 1992 when I was 31.
Yeah,
and
I was wondering if I was going to ask Eric about this. Stephen has a lot of these experiences that seem like they're kind of like what people describe in
wintertime.
No, where they get sleep paralysis, they see a lot of weird creatures and stuff like that. It seems like Stephen is a lot of his experiences are in the astral realm, or it's like that these creatures that have been plaguing his whole life and his family. It's like they also monitor the family members in the astral realm and kind of keep tabs on them. And this one experience he had, tell him about the.
It's totally
really
different.
Bizarre experience.
I really like to disseminate the difference between sleep paralysis and what I've experienced.
No, I meant but this is the kind of the weird creatures that people see in the astral realm sometimes.
Yeah, definitely they happen. So my mom's seen them. The different members of my family have seen them. But this experience that happened when I was 31 years old. In 1992, really forced me, in a sense, to really start reopening my own investigation. I wanted to find out who this old Glegley character was and what was going on. As a kid, I was interested in UFOs, but I didn't make a big deal out of it. So, anyways, there was this morning that I was married to my ex-wife, and she was a school teacher. And she was, getting ready to go to school to teach. And, it would always take her 2 hours to get ready to go. That's just the way she was, okay? So, it's 5:30 in the morning, and it's dark. And, I have to go, make an hour and 10-minute drive to go to work as an acupuncturist. So I'm not going to get up at 5:30 in the morning. So, anyways, I'm just laying down to go back to sleep, and I hear this Harley Davidson. You can't mistake a Harley Davidson. Can't mistake it, right? And we live on the second story, top story of a condo complex in Woodland Hills, and we're in a gated community, right? And there's the pool there, and I got up. I was really annoyed, and I went over to the window and says, "Who the f is revving a Harley Davidson
at 5 a.m.
at 5:30 a.m. In a gated community, and there's nobody there." All right, so I thought, well, that's really strange. So I went back to bed and lay back down, trying to go to sleep. I can move my body, no problem, and then it happens again, and this time it's louder. And by this time, I'm getting oh my God, what is going on? And I rolled over onto my back, face up, and then all these creatures and beings came into the room. No sound, but they were bipedal humans, and then some animals, and they were some were trying to hold me down, and others were moving around, and they were actually, some were red, there were different colors, but it was no sound, but it was like where I was kind of terrified, but I could move if I wanted to. And this went on for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then they just left. And then I got up, and I just had to splash water on my face, whatever. And then I still had to go to work. Okay, still had to make that drive
and pretend to be normal.
And pretend to be normal. So about a day or two after that, I went and I sought out a psychic. and talked to her about it, April Douglas. And she said, well, no, I didn't tell her like anything about aliens. We said, she's getting the sense that there was some alien involvement. And that's kind of when I started doing my research. Like, the first thing I got was like Admiral Byrd's book had just come out. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was his lost diary,
His diary,
whatever,
yeah.
had just come out. And I did my reading of like things like Bramley's book, The Gods of Eden, and things like that. So I started doing my own research way before the internet and way before cell phones and things like that. So,
but I was wondering what Eric thinks about this this experience you had, and are we dealing with the astral realm here? Do you think, or
I think so. I had the experience. I call it the in between in my own experience. Yeah. But that's kind of where, with the empath stuff, I deal with spirits that will come to me looking for. I kind of liken it, empath as like a lighthouse in the dark. So we're kind of a beacon, because spirits are like, oh, that's somebody that can see me, notice me, hear me, that type of stuff.
Right.
And so a lot of times I'll be in that in between of awake and asleep, and I know that I'm not asleep. Right. But I'm also not fully conscious awake, right?
Right.
I can still hear the TV in the room. I can still hear my dogs, my husband snoring, whatever. But I'm not fully in my body either. And that's when I have a lot of spirits come to me and I have interaction with different spirits. Before I learned how to deal with it, when I was younger, I always liken it to that scene in the movie Ghost, where Whoopi Goldberg actually has the gift finally, and the spirits are all lined up against the wall, and she said, okay, that's enough, and they all get up and just walk through the wall, and you realize they're all ghosts, they're not real people. And that's kind of how it was in my house for a while until I learned how to kind of protect myself and kind of shut down. But I've had that experience. There
was just too many of them bombarding you, huh?
Yeah, and then you get the ones
that a beacon.
Yeah, and then you get the ones that don't want to take the word no for an answer.
Right.
And they want to get nasty, and then you have to bring in like spirit guides and things to kind of deal with them. But no, I've kind of been in that same realm myself quite a few times, and I've not on purpose, but I've accidentally astral projected a few times, where I was actually flying over Nashville because I live right outside of Nashville, and I knew that this wasn't a dream. It all felt real. It was definitely real feeling.
Yeah, astral is quite different than dreaming. People feel the difference.
Yeah, and that in between feeling, like Stephen's talking about, is the difference between sleeping and being awake. You're in this in between kind of zone. Right. And I think sleep paralysis is very real for people, and your body naturally does that to stop you from hurting yourself in your sleep, and stop people from sleepwalking. People that sleepwalk chronically, that part of their brain doesn't shut off like it's supposed to and paralyze them, so they sleepwalk. Otherwise, we would all be sleepwalking.
I was a sleepwalker when I was younger.
Yeah, she has some pretty interesting things that happen. Exactly. The thing is, especially like with like, for instance, Mary, I told you this recently. I accidentally, got out of my body because I had to go to the bathroom. It was about 6:00 in the morning, and it was dark, and I had to go pee, right? And so I'm a 250-pound guy, 5'9", 250, so I'm not a lightweight by any stretch. And I just jumped out of bed.
Sprung out of bed.
I sprung out of bed. As a 250-pound guy, right? Yeah. 64 years of age,
that doesn't happen
so
anymore.
I sprung out of bed, and I went to the door, and I tried to open the door, and I can't open the door. I'm thinking, what the hell?
It's because you forgot your body.
I'm in the room, and I know I'm in the room, so I turn around, and I look back, and my body is laying face up, my physical body. Yep. And I'm thinking, oh, my God. I was thinking two things first. First thing you think, did I just die? Which I knew I didn't, but that's the first thing you think, and then I think, then it's the next thing I say, I astral projected, so I just basically lay back down, got in my physical body, and then I got up the usual way, which is a little slow, and then opened the door
achy,
normally,
creaky,
it's like, but it's just like, and then the other day too, I went into bed about 9:30 at night, 10:00, whatever, and I felt this being or this person get into bed next to me.
It wasn't me.
Leslie was still watching TV, so I know it wasn't her. And I just thought to myself, because this has happened to me so many times, right? The knocking behind my head
Yeah,
on the
like,
wall
okay,
3
who's
times.
this and what do they
All right, so I
want?
said, I basically tried to ignore it. Says, okay, what's going to happen tonight, right? So,
Yeah.
anyways, again, I was awakened by having to go to the bathroom again about the same time, and I was awake. I wasn't in any kind of sleep paralysis,
Yeah.
and this female voice that was Asian sounding said into my right ear, said into it, not in my head, in my right ear, said, "Husband." Okay, Leslie has never referred to me as husband in our
Yeah.
whole almost 30-year relationship.
And I'm always visible.
Yes. And so
Right.
it was just like, okay, and the other things that happened, in between that too, with UFOs and whatever. I'm still, in other words, we are still having interactions happening to this
Yeah.
to this very day. Okay, it hasn't stopped for me. Okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give advice to some people, sleep paralysis sufferers. When we were being taught how to astral project and, Kundalini raising practices and chanting and whatnot, they told us that one of the ways to become astral is if you find yourself in that in-between place, like you're just coming awake, but you
Yeah.
can't move. That's this, they call it a time of power, actually, because when you're in this state, it's easy to become astral. You know what I mean?
Hypnopompic.
Yeah, it's all you have to do is mentally command your astral body to rise up out of your physical body. And
Yeah.
if you're in this state where you're in between like that, you can actually do it. And one night I was doing the practices we had been taught. I'd never done it on purpose before, and I did these practices, and Steve gave me a book too. That
The
some
art.
of
It's called The Art of Astral Projection.
yeah, and I read
It
chapter 1
is
and
great.
did some of the practices that night, and
Mhm.
I popped out of my body, and I was so surprised, and I was up near the cottage cheese ceiling, that bumpy ceiling that
Yeah, the
people have,
popcorn.
right?
1970s houses.
Yeah.
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 So I was only 6 inches away from it, and I was so surprised that I went, wow, and slammed back into my body so hard I jumped in the bed, But I was going to say, if you find yourself in that strange state in between, you might want to experiment with going astral. It's actually, people feel vulnerable in that state because they can't move. But it
Yeah.
really is not a time of vulnerability, but
Right.
more of a time of power.
Yeah,
Actually.
of course,
Yeah.
in the physical state, it is your time of power. You
Yeah.
you want to feel like almost like you're glued to the floor or glued to the bed, because that means number one, your brainwave cycles are down to about 2 to 4 cycles per second,
Yeah.
which is what you need to be. You need to be in deep delta state to be able to do astral projection, and the longer you can stay there and use mental commands. It's just like if you're learning to ride a bike, in the beginning you're going to wobble a lot, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with the astral body. But if you've done it 100 or 1,000 times, it's just like getting out of bed.
After
It's nothing.
after about 10 times of doing it, I started to I frequently had trouble. I'd slam back in a lot. Beginners do that a lot, but after a while, because you think you're trying to move your astral arm,
Right.
but then you move your physical arm, and then the next thing you know, you pop back
Right.
into your body.
Yeah.
But after a while, after about 10 times of doing it, I started to be able to feel the difference between the astral
Right.
body and the physical body.
Yeah.
And I could start moving it like I was actually swimming in the astral realm. It was
The basic
I like
very
the-
cool, really.
I like the term time of power, because when I
Yeah.
first started having that in between experience, the first kind of nasty spirit that I had was a younger lady who got very, very nasty, and it scared me because I was in that in between astral place, and it scared me until my spirit guides were like, "No, you have the power over her here
right.
because you're living, she's not, and she's not allowed to do anything you don't allow her to do." And so that kind of empowered me. And so now, when I go into that state and I have a difficult spirit that won't listen to reason, I'm like, okay, I'll just take care of you. Like, it doesn't, what I'm saying? I'm not scared of it
Yeah.
anymore. I'm not scared of any of those, especially human spirits that I've come across there, of like going up against them if they don't want to, but the really nasty girl that I came across was trying to jump my body. because she did not want to be dead and did not want to go where she was supposed to go. And it was not to the light. She was not, I don't know what she did in life, but she was not a good person. And, that was the only time I've ever scared, because like I said, I felt like I was kind of fighting for my soul, because she was trying to jump my body.
Jump your body. She was trying to
take
you.
over. Yeah. She was trying to take me over. And it scared me because I'd never experienced anything like that. But after that point of the spirit guides helping me and me using my own, power to get rid of her, it hasn't really scared me since, because I feel empowered in that space now of, I have a lot more, I feel like I have a lot more power in that space than as, human, because we have so many limitations as human, but in that space, your energy. And if your energy is a lot brighter and better than theirs, you definitely have a lot more power over them.
Yep.
Because you're attached to a living body. Still, right.
Yeah. I before we leave, because we're kind of getting up against the time, I wanted to, for your audience, what you're talking about, an experience happened to me when I was 23. And this was in 1983, and I was sleeping on the floor at that time in my life because I enjoyed it. I was still in the military, as a reserve, and I just enjoyed sleeping on the floor. It felt more comfortable. So anyways, I woke up again like early in the morning, and there was a light on in the kitchen so I could see, and my body felt like it was like, as you feel like, super relaxed, not paralyzed, but just really, really relaxed.
Yeah.
And I looked up toward the beam. My dad and I were cabinet makers, so we installed those beams. So I looked at the beam at the ceiling, and there was this little being. Actually, the being was about 1.5 feet tall, about 1.5 feet by about 1 foot wide, and had this triangular head, and had these big dark eyes, and it was shimmery. And it was just hovering up there. And when it noticed that I noticed it floated down, landed by my right side on the floor, and it said to me in this deep baritone voice, it said, "Do you want me to help you get out of your body?"
I wasn't expecting him to say baritone voice with this tiny little being,
Right.
But it was
high piping voice.
It was 1.5 feet by about 1 foot wide. These big feet, right? So it's this pitch black, right? And there was this, I was a Tai Chi, apprentice at the time, and I was like, really into the whole studies, whatever. And I knew that I couldn't show fear. Something intuitively told me I cannot show fear. So I said back to this being, I said, "You could help me, but you cannot possess me." And I felt this little tingling down below my belly button, and I felt this tiny little fear. But anyways, this being tried to grab my right arm, tried to pull me out, and then it let out this kind of like this frustration, and then it disappeared. My dad asked me that morning. He said, "Who were you talking to?" He
could hear the other voice.
He could hear both voices. So my family and my dad and everybody growing up in a family that had these spirit guides, it was just like another thing happening. But it's like somehow I knew in my mind that I could not, in my spirit, my soul, that I could not let this being, take possession of me, because if I showed fear or weakness, I was going to be possessed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was an actual thing. My mom had seen a similar thing maybe 20 years before that, but not the same being. But anyway, so I just wanted to share that.
I wanted to ask you, how do you deal with the beings? How do you exert your power over them? Is what I want to know.
Good question. Yeah.
It's I kind of, for me, it feels like a mind over matter thing of like almost pushing my will out as like I don't know how to describe it, as like an energy wave of like, I'm not going to hurt you, but you're going to get out of my space. I don't care where you go, but this is my space where I sleep. This is my sanctuary. So it's almost like a wave that I push out of intention, for one. This is my intention, because I'm not talking to them, especially if they're being nasty. We're not physically talking to each other. But I'm putting out this wave of intention of, for one, this is how powerful I am, and I'm not scared of you, and you need to leave my space because this is my space. And so most of them are pretty respectful because they're just normal. I mean, there's normal people who've crossed over, right? You
Yeah.
know,
Our dearly departed.
yeah, yeah. And so I tell them this is not the time for me. You know, and like I said, I'm not nasty about it. It's just that putting out that thought form of this is not the time and place for this. You know,
So
I didn't invite you
say
here.
like an exertion of your will is how
Yeah,
you would
yeah.
put it, right?
But in a respectful way, unless they decide to be disrespectful.
That's the way I did it. I said,
Yeah.
you can help me, but you cannot
Yeah.
possess me.
Yeah.
When
Okay.
when we were being taught, they told us that there are beings in the astral realm that might attack you, but that we have the ability to rise to higher levels,
Higher
Yeah.
vibrational
but
levels,
that these astral creatures don't have that ability. So we can escape them easily. But it never even occurred to me to like fight them with my will rather than
Yeah.
you know. But maybe you can. Maybe you
that's
can.
that's what I did.
Yeah, exert your
It's
will over them.
You set boundaries. You set your own
Yeah.
boundaries because you're
Yeah.
a physical being.
yeah. And they for whatever reason they have to. I mean, for the most part, they are compelled to abide by that.
Yeah.
They can fight it, but they're going to lose because
Right.
then they're getting the attention of other protectional beings like our spirit guides and stuff that are going to come in and help you deal with
Right.
them at that point. You know,
Right.
like the really nasty one that was trying to jump my body. The spirit guides came in and helped at that point, but they didn't jump in until I asked them to, and they knew that I needed
Right.
help.
And
Because
so you actually have the power to invoke helpers too.
yeah.
I see. Well, that would be
Yeah.
very
well,
useful.
I have that too, but it's just, you know, and I think my life has been saved at least 2 different times by, you know, that's another whole different story where I
That's a whole
should've
other
died.
can of worms we could talk
A
about
whole
for 2
different can
hours.
of worms, you know, like,
Because
I should have died.
I've had the same thing.
I should have died.
Yeah, you have a
Yeah.
a survival experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been several times where they have poked and prodded me to not do something. And one of the
Oh.
times that we didn't listen, well, I listened, but my husband wouldn't listen. And this is when we first got together, when he still thought I was crazy for the empath stuff, but he still loved me. But
Yeah,
this taught him to pay attention to the ESP stuff. Like when I
Yeah.
tell him I'm having this feeling, you know, but we were going to take a weekend trip to Chattanooga, which is only a couple hours from us. And it was raining really hard. And I told him, I said, I have this gut feeling we should not leave the house today. We should not go on this trip. If we're going to go, we'll go tomorrow, but not today. And it was just this overwhelming sense of dread and just this gnawing at me that they were poking me saying, do not go. Something bad is going to happen. He talks me into going, and I ignored that gut feeling, that intuition, that spirit guide poking me with a stick. And we had a really bad wreck. Now, luckily, neither one of us were badly hurt, but I take it that was a warning.
Yeah.
That was a shot across the bow of, if you don't listen to us, we can't help you get to your mission in life, right? Of what you're here to do, the things you're here to do. I also feel like sometimes even though we have free will, I think if I make the wrong decisions and get off track in a way, I feel like I'm off track and they nudge me back in the right, where I'm supposed to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not that necessarily, our destinies, I don't believe in destiny or it's predetermined, but I think we're here to learn certain lessons and to help certain people, other beings and other people. And so I think they put you where you're supposed to be sometimes. Like with y'all going to that Bigfoot conference where, you didn't sell a book, but
Yeah.
hey, the reason you were there was to meet the documentary filmmaker guy,
That's right.
Exactly.
And so,
it's, might be good, might be bad story. That's the famous
Yeah.
old Chinese
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Might be good, might be bad. And it's, oh, that's terrible. And something else happens that, oh, well, okay, no, that's good, but no,
Yeah.
it might be bad, it might be good.
It's like this guy, his stallion, his horse runs away. oh, don't worry, it might be good. But the next day he comes back with 6 mares that followed him home, And,
Well, it
yeah,
actually starts out where his eldest son is like,
he breaks his leg, and they think, oh,
el-
that's bad. But then,
eldest son is trying to break like this great horse, right? And
Yeah.
he basically breaks his leg, and this, oh my God, your son broke his leg, and then a war breaks out, and all the guys have to
conscription
go.
notice,
They have
he
to
didn't
go.
have to
We have to go
go.
to war, but he can't go to war because he got a broken leg. Okay, and so then so
Might be
it's
good,
one of
might
these
be
things
bad.
like
Yeah,
it's never completely bad, never completely good. So
Yeah.
I agree. I agree exactly with that whole thing you're talking about as far as the. I don't think that anything is really truly predestined because that
Yeah.
would mean that we wouldn't really have any free will because it'd already be predestined for us. But I think we do have helpers, and that's what my experience has been. That if you call out and you're in tune enough with your spirit guides or whatever you want to call them, or people that you're in your case that they will definitely assist you. Like say like when April the 1st, 1992, at Nicholas Canyon Beach, I went body surfing and to the Pacific Ocean, which was about 50 some odd degrees at the time, and I wasn't wearing any wetsuit. I hadn't been body surfing for a long time, and I got too far out. Okay, all the other guys that had common sense that were wearing bodysuits, they were already coming in to shore, right?
Wetsuits, yeah.
Wetsuits, right?
Yeah.
Bodysuits. And I said, okay, maybe I should start coming in, right? And then for the first and only time in my life, I'm swimming and I guess I'm in a riptide or something because I'm not making any headway. And then
Yep.
I lose all feeling in both my arms. They become like lead weights, which is never. And I've been in the Navy, I was in
Yeah.
really good shape, but I wasn't like in good swimming shape. And I knew that, oh my God, I'm getting swept further out, and so I'm thinking,
You're
okay,
going to die.
I'm going to die. So I basically yell, and my ex-wife, who really, anyways, I'm glad we're not together anymore. Put it that way. But
Me
anyway,
too,
so
honey, me too.
so anyways,
Right.
I noticed there was this lifeguard that was at the lifeguard tower. The lifeguard towers are kind of back on the beach, right? And he's flirting with 2 or 3 of these pretty girls, right? He's wearing the red shorts, and I was like, real help. The waves are coming, so it's like, he didn't hear me, so I yelled,
Yeah.
help again. And then I said, Steven, you got to yell as loud as you can, otherwise you're going to die, right? So I yelled help, and with my arm, I finally was able to get my arm up a little bit, and then either he or one of the girls saw me, and then I went down. This guy is like 150 feet away from me between the beach and the water. And the tower. He's at least 150 feet away from me.
Yeah.
And I went down. I was 6 feet under in these waves, and I start to see the light. And I'm thinking, oh, this isn't going to be so bad. And I'm about ready. I'm about ready to basically, I couldn't hold my breath anymore. And then this arm just grabs me from up above and just grabs my arm. Somehow this guy went in 2 or 3 seconds, covered 150 feet, going into the waves with me being under the water.
And
okay,
finds him.
And finds
Yeah.
me.
Miraculously.
Miraculously. And then he basically puts me in like the fireman's type of hole, said, relax,
Yeah.
sir. I'm going to bring you in, whatever. And he brought me in, and I can't even move my arms when I get out of the water, right? And, my wife at the time, not Leslie,
Not me.
was like, just basically more or less embarrassed and annoyed, right? And I want to thank this guy, and the guy's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
He had 3 pretty girls around him that, would have said, oh my God, you're such a hero, this kind of stuff. And he's not checking on me. He's just gone. Okay.
Yeah.
One of these things where, April Fool's Day, 1992, Nicholas Canyon Beach, that is what happened to me. And I'll never forget that because it's like, to this day, there's no way that this guy was able to find me.
There's more than one time that
it's happened to me.
This spirit guide guy, O'Glegley, saved a member of the family. More
Right.
than once it's happened.
My
And
Uncle Douglas.
we think that they both prey on and protect family members because it's
Yeah.
like they're protecting something they need. We
Yeah.
think that
Prize
Yeah.
cow.
this whole abduction thing is that they're harvesting some product that they need,
Yeah.
At first we thought, well, maybe they're just like interested in us. They just want a sample, a scientific sample, no big deal. But then that would have been where they were taking a cross section of humanity, all different, type of humans. But what
Yeah.
they're mainly doing is they're taking Caucasians.
Mainly.
It's like 94% of the abduction phenomenon
Some
is
studies,
Caucasians.
some studies say as high as that. Yes.
So we
Yeah,
think
the
that
missing,
points to them being a branch of the Caucasian race. Just happened to be a branch of the
Right.
Caucasian race.
There's something along those lines with the missing 411 stuff too, where people just go missing out in the wilderness and stuff.
Right.
Yes.
There's a Caucasian element, and if you're of Germanic heritage, you're more than likely than somebody who's not
Right.
to be one of these
Exactly.
people that just disappear in the thin air in the woods.
And his family,
Yep.
a lot of his family line came from Germany to England originally.
That's
so.
correct. We're
Yeah.
we're up against a minute and an hour and 45 minutes.
Yes,
so-
okay. Well, I guess we have
Yeah.
to end our wonderful conversation. I would have loved
Yeah.
to keep going.
Yeah,
We'll have
yeah.
one more short break before we go into our outro. But we want to thank our wonderful guest tonight. And Eric, do you have anything
Yeah.
besides your book that you wanted to plug? Or
My
tell people
podcast-
the name of your book one more time.
The name of the book is Small Town Haunts and Legends of Tennessee. And my podcast will be back with new episodes at the end of February. I've taken a kind of extended break, but it'll be back at the end of February. But until then, there's 170 episodes of all topics of the paranormal that you can go listen to. You can also go listen to Leslie and Steven on the show. We had an awesome conversation there. And other UFO, I got a few other UFO people, Bigfoot, cryptids, werewolves, dogmen, ghosts, kind of run the gamut, haunted houses, all that. But yeah, the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. And it's on every player you can imagine. I only do audio, so you won't find video, but it's also on YouTube. And and I got that in the book. And then check out the Night House, thenightHouseKY.com if you're in the Hopkinsville area.
And that's
And,
night
come see
spelled
us.
with a K, right?
KNIGHT. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
All right.
But thank y'all for having me. It's a
Oh,
pleasure
Eric, it's
every
been
time I talk to y'all.
a
It's
real
always great.
pleasure,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot how much fun we had last time.
yeah, it's always
It's
fun.
easy to get kind of confused when you've done like you've done 170, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on. I think this is episode 12. This is going to be.
Well,
for us.
between being guests and that, it's about 100 for us, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
we've
Yeah.
been a guest many times. Well, anyway,
Yeah,
good night,
I've probably
everyone,
done
and thank you
200.
so much for tuning in, and once again, thanks to our wonderful guest Eric.
Okay. Peace and prosperity.